Hello, folks, and welcome to another edition of Heavy Hands. I'm your host, Connor, and there's my co-host, Mr. Phil.
Yo.
And it's a bit late today, isn't it, Phil?
It's a little bit.
This is a
little bit late.
Evening edition of Heavy Hands, which you might assume is responsible for our very relaxed attitude, but it's actually because, and Phil and I planned this in advance, this is the 420 edition of Heavy Hands, bro, right?
Settle in for some smooth vibes and chilled, relaxed, mixed martial arts analysis.
I'm ready, bro, to talk about Ian Garry versus Carlos Prates, which is the main event of next weekend's UFC Fight Night card. Not an Apex event. Maybe for the first time in his life, Dana White was not lying when he said the UFC was going to back off of the Apex. I note that they have 2 next month, but they do seem to have been making an effort to have more of these travel cards for which they do feel some fleeting responsibility to actually book sensible fights rather than just content slop. So I'll take it.
Yeah, I mean, the word on the street is obviously that people feel like the asking price that the UFC is looking for its largely slot-based product is too high. So, yeah, I think they've belatedly realized, like, maybe we should try and dress it up for a little bit.
You know, even if it's just a completely perfunctory move, even if it's just to, like, sweeten their sale, I'll take it when I can get it. I much prefer this to a standard Apex card, and I don't think there are many people out there who would disagree with me on that. So let's see, what else do we have on here? Well, the co-main event is an Apex fight. Anthony Smith versus Mingyang Zhang. I don't think we're going to talk about that one. In fact, I think we'll skip right over it because this card also marks the return of Giga Chikadze, Phil's arch nemesis, who has not fought since nearly a year ago now, and he's taking on David Onama, which I think is well, they're kind of. I think Onama frustrates me more than Chikadze, honestly, Phil. I've never really understood why you hate Chikadze with such passion, but we will get into that in the second segment of today's episode. And then we'll probably try to hit just a couple other, semi-interesting fights. Michel Pereira, Abu Smagomedov, Randy Brown, Nicholas Dalby, Ikram Alaskarov, Andre Muniz. None of these are terrible. Some of them are actually quite decent in my opinion. So, like I said, I'll take it. If this is the best I can get for a non-pay-per-view card, I'll take it. Let's talk about the main event. Ian Garry, Carlos Prates. What a journey we've been on with both of these fighters. Ian Garry arriving in the UFC seeming full of promise. A smart, technical, strategically minded fighter. And seemed to be improving in that regard, was getting more dangerous for his opponents, was getting more pointed with his offense. And then he took that one step up into like top 10 level competition, and it turned out his whole game was like paper mache. Just there wasn't as much inside as we thought. It was oh God. What's the thing you hit with the candy in it?
Piñata?
A piñata.
I'm the British guy here.
I'm actually impressed. That's like the best I've heard any British person pronounce a Spanish word in my life.
Sorry. Pinata.
Thank you. Yeah, turned out he was a piñata, and it wasn't candy inside, folks. And now he's taking on somebody who is, not as tenured as the high-level dudes he's been fighting, but is certainly one of the most dangerous of his recent opponents. Granted, he did make it 5 rounds with Shavkat Rakhmonov, even though his main intention in that fight seemed to be not getting finished. Maybe that says something about how he'll choose to approach the deadly puncher Prates, but I don't know. What do you think?
I'm really not sure about this one. I think this card is actually like really well booked. From a competition standpoint.
Mm-hmm.
I just looked down this one and I'm like, most of these, some of them, I absolutely have a pick straight off the bat. But a lot of them, I'm just like, yeah, that could really go either way.
Mm-hmm.
And the obvious issue with, there are sort of two issues with the, Garry, getting exposed at a higher level kind of, problem. Is that one, Carlos Prates has currently thrashed exactly the same tier of people that Garry thrashed.
Yep.
And the second one is that Garry hasn't so much disintegrated when he's gone up a level, as happens to a lot of fighters.
No.
Suddenly reach a new level of competition.
He's calcified.
As much. Yeah. As he's just sort of gotten stuck.
Yeah.
With, and in some ways these are not, these are, ugly sort of strategic performances and so on, but they're also laudable in their own way if you look at this as being, the fights of someone who is determined to have a very long career.
Yeah.
And who is, trying to essentially look after themselves as much as humanly possible. Because, on the one hand, I said at the time, the Shavkat fight was kind of shockingly boring, considering who both fighters were. On the other hand, it is kind of impressive that he managed to pull a kind of a stinker out of Shavkat and just basically get out of a fight with him with just no damage taken.
That's a good point.
And like a moderately, and like a genuinely somewhat competitive fight.
Yeah, I mean, what we've
so boring. I can't even remember my scorecards for it. Really,
who does?
But yeah, it was just like and it also proved that like. And the sort of the corollary of this, sort of the third point, I guess, is that we really realized that, like, Ian Garry might be, like, increasingly strategically, let's say, stupid, but he does have, like, a lot of depth of skill.
Yes.
Depth, actually. Let's change that. He has a lot of breadth of skill. Like, he's genuinely a pretty good grappler.
Yeah.
Like, he's a much better grappler than I thought he was after his last, essentially, 2 fights.
Yeah. There's not a massive, weak phase for him, really. He seems quite well-rounded, quite capable of surviving, at the very least, anywhere the fight goes. And yeah, I think that's an excellent point. I mean, it's not that Garry has proven incapable of hanging with top 10 fighters. It's that he has proven to be, that he'll really struggle to convincingly beat them.
Yeah.
But,
I mean, it feels bizarrely like we are watching young veteran going backwards.
Right.
Like someone who's putting themselves in, like winnable fights and just not, just being happy to compete in them, doing whatever the other guy is doing. And they're coming from that, they're entering into that from the perspective of someone who was fighting as a much more, like, dynamic threat and kind of fucking people up.
Yeah.
And, yeah, again, I'm a bit unsure as to how much of this is things that Garry can change. How much of it is things that kind of will change? Will he turn the corner and go back the other way? Will he become more like, will he come out of being the old young veteran into, just back into the dynamism phase? Or does he just have does he just perhaps have just like a hard athletic ceiling that means that he doesn't actually have the firepower to hang with these kind of people?
Mm-hmm.
Because I suspect this may be the kind of fight that answers his question. Because Prates, on the other hand, again, he's just hard to get a bead on.
Yeah.
Because he's not an incredible technician, but he just seems to have he's very physically potent, and he just seems to have exceptional instincts.
Yeah. He is a great tactical eye. He picks up on his opponent's patterns. He, actively works to take away bothersome weapons from the opponent, keeps the pressure on, and he's a little more ordered than Jean Silva, if not quite so freakishly over the line of athletic potential for his division. But he's pretty close. I mean, he's certainly a devastating puncher, and has so far looked also more than tough enough to be as kind of shallow as he is defensively. And he totally understands what he needs to do to make his game work.
Yep.
But I think this should be viewed as as you said, the guys he's been beating, you can give Prates points for taking care of Neil Magny in a way that Ian Garry couldn't. But, that was a pretty easy call, right? That's just the kind of fighter Prates is. It doesn't mean he's better. It means he's just a totally different beast than Ian Garry. And that's what happens when Prates is winning a fight. He crushes you. That doesn't necessarily mean that he's going to do as well as Garry at the level that Garry has more recently been fighting at. And I think this should rightly be viewed as a significant step up for Prates. Here is somebody who has at the very least shown himself to be very good at not giving the fight away.
Mm-hmm.
And this cannot really be said for the guys that Prates has been dusting on the road here. So I think my gut feeling is actually to pick Garry here, just without even considering any of the specific tactical or technical details or whatever, or even thinking too much about, how inert Garry might potentially look en route to winning this fight. It just seems on a base level like a matchup where Prates is not going to be given the same wealth of opportunities that he has against opponents thus far.
Yeah. Because the basic equation that's dictated Prates' fights is, a simple dynamism check. He's got strong instincts, and, he's a straight, accurate puncher,
mm-hmm.
With, tremendous power and all this other kind of stuff. But, Li Jingliang, Neil Magny, guys like this, they are just vulnerable to getting just blown out of the water.
Yeah.
We know this.
Yeah.
And the one thing about that terrible fight with Chikadze is that it was Ian Garry, neutralizing one of the most dynamic, dangerous threats
right
in the division. That's the one thing you can say about Shavkat Rakhmonov is this is the first time that he's basically not finished his opponent.
Yeah,
it wasn't even that he didn't. It wasn't even he wasn't even close to finishing his opponent. He was just given. He took a 100% finish rate opponent and just made him look like a pedestrian grappler.
Right. He's fought other tough guys who are hard to finish, but I mean, compare his fight with Jeff Neal to his fight with Ian Garry.
Mm-hmm.
Garry just did not allow it to be a brawl. And I remember thinking he necessarily did enough to win, but he absolutely largely neutralized Shavkat Rachmanov.
Yeah. It's one thing I just genuinely have to go back to look at that fight and find myself and like figure out what my scorecards for it were, because I genuinely can't remember.
There's not a lot to score, to be honest.
Yeah, I think I end up expecting Shavkat to win just because he was initiating more grappling exchanges and, you know, winning the beginning and end of them and so on and so forth. But yeah, just an extremely close and tedious fight. And yeah, if you look at things like, Prates' fight with Magny is not particularly like a strategic masterclass. He does the right things. He puts him up against the cage and kicks his leg and knocks him out.
Yeah.
But, it's a much dicier fight than Garry's one with Magny.
Totally. He is somebody who throws himself into the teeth of the opponent.
Yeah. He's getting involved in clinch exchanges, and he's having to sweep. When he's getting taken down, it's just he's sort of all over the place in terms of where he's in the cage. It's just a messier fight that, as you said, just happens to be a finish because that's what he does. And yeah, it's obviously that he's also been able to afford being like not the best defensive fighter, because if people are exchanging with him, he's just crushing them.
Yeah.
And yeah, I'm not necessarily sure that that's the case.
And we have
a particular fight.
We truly have no idea how he does in a potential 5-round fight. Suppose he doesn't finish Garry. I mean, you could pretty much say about Prates that he has basically never fought to a real decision. His last fight that went to a decision was in 2019, and his opponent was 1-0.
Yeah.
Right? Like, it says something that all the guys he's been fighting since are better than that, and he's been finishing them. But, again, that's just the structure of his game. If he can't get Ian Garry out of there quickly, what does he look like? You have to assume not as good, but we don't know. Because it just hasn't come up. I mean, this is the eternal problem with knockout punchers, right? You just get a long series of very small samples. And it's difficult to know what to expect.
Yeah, and I honestly don't know what to expect from Garry either. I mean, certainly the one consistent factor about all his late fight is his more recent fights is just like lowered activity.
Yeah.
So, I think it would be maybe like strategically wise and also just like genuinely very encouraging to see Ian Garry like coming forward and putting Prates on his heels.
Yeah.
I can't think that we're going to see that. I think he's probably going to continue trying to lean on his grappling. That's the other thing that we've seen as his, that's allowed us to see the improvements in his and the sort of breadth of his grappling game, is that he's actually going for it a lot. Like a lot of those grappling exchanges against Shavkat were initiated by Garry.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I mean, but I'm just not sure that over 5, that Prates is going to be minding his P's and Q's defensively enough on the feet. He just gets tagged by pretty much everyone, and Garry can put up some kind of lead against him. Again, he's a bit passive nowadays, and with his back against the fence, it probably is going to be a bit of a shaky proposition. But also, yeah, I just don't know how Prates survives like extended grappling exchanges, because again, the Magny fight is just him, athletically sweeping his way out of grounded positions. Can he keep doing that for 5 rounds? I simply don't know.
Yep. Yeah, one thing that is definitely worth considering here, and I suppose we would have to ask to what extent was this a factor in Garry's fight with Neil? Prates is a southpaw.
Yeah, well, that is a good point.
How smart is Ian Garry really? Does he know that you can jab a southpaw? I think he's at the very best, he's proven inconsistent in that regard. And I do think, aside from just the speed and power of Jeff Neal, that had a lot to do with how completely inert his positional game looked against Neal. He did a lot of just sort of sticking the lead hand out there when he was trying to keep Neal at bay rather than actually, sticking him with the jab. I think it was probably his worst performance in terms of footwork because he didn't seem to know how to navigate the cage while also, maintaining some semblance of a threat. So every time he had to reset, it was just a full, catch me if you can kind of reset where he would just bound away.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
If that's a problem for him against Prates, that is going to be a serious problem, I think.
Yes.
I'm still not certain that it leads to him losing the fight, though, because he's just I just fully expect he'll do everything in his power to stay away from Prates. And look, I don't want to undersell Prates. Like, I don't think he's just like a brute. Like, he is a thinking fighter. Huh? He is picking up on patterns from the opponent. He can cut off the cage, at least to the extent that his opponents so far have forced him to prove that. He's also not going to be quite so eager or prone to leap into the clinch, I think, as Shavkat Rakhmonov. Like, that is a built-in part of Rakhmonov's game. He can always fall past his feet on his strikes because he loves to fight in the clinch and loves to wrestle. And Prates is a lot more focused on staying over his feet and quickly disengaging when he does end up in a clinch. Or framing and battering you with some devastating strikes or whatever. He treats that as an opportunity to regain space and land something rather than, okay, we've now changed to a wrestling battle, as Rakhmonov tends to do. So it's a tough one to feel good about calling either way, to be honest.
Yeah. Yeah. I think the southpaw thing is a big consideration. Because what we're seeing from Garry is not someone who looks like feels like he has to sharpen the elements of his game that he considers himself to already be good at.
Yeah.
So he's just going to be like, well, beat Jeff Neal on the feet. So
we're good.
I think I'm pretty good at that southpaw thing. And so, I think we do get that extra inert fight. But it's the fact that we've never seen Garry really hurt either through, partially through his own ability to control the fight, partially because I suspect he's just very tough.
Yeah.
Prates has at least been hurt a bunch of times, hurt and finished a bunch of times throughout his career.
Mm-hmm.
So, that he does not have an unbreakable chin.
Mm-hmm.
And again, given the dynamism check of the people he's been up against in the UFC, none of them have been particularly ones which are going to threaten that.
Yeah. Then again.
So, I feel like I do sort of have to pick Garry. But it's definitely a fight between someone who you increasingly get the impression is just overthinking things.
Yeah.
And someone who doesn't need to overthink things at all. And that's always a scary fight to pick for the first guy, because you're running such a risk that you're just going to end up looking incredibly stupid, because, at some point Garry will start looking freaked out and will move exactly the wrong way on the cage and just get slapped.
Yeah. Maybe Garry just, is also feeling stuff that we can't quite intuit from our perspective as well. Like, maybe he really does just feel like his game does not function the same way against these higher tier athletes. But, so, I mean, I don't know if overthinking as much as he's just viewing these matchups through a different lens than we are. And it does feel like it does feel like he's outsmarting himself sometimes. But it's impossible to miss the fact that all of these recent fights have been marked by Garry being so much more of a pure neutralizer than he was even against really aggressive guys earlier in his career.
Yep. But, as neutralizing performances judged under the Rose Namajunas metric, they are broadly roaring successes.
Yeah, yeah, it's true. Rose would be proud, certainly. Just to clarify, by the way, he does do some jabbing against Jeff Neal. He at least throws it. It doesn't quite connect to his footwork the way that it used to in the southpaw matchup, and there is a lot of time just spent running around with nothing happening except for Neal, unsuccessfully trying to cut him off. But he at least he remembered he had a left hand, so he'll probably hit Prates with some jabs.
Yeah, I mean, he really should, because Trevin Giles was actually kind of lighting Prates up.
Yeah.
Every combination which started with a jab, Prates was like, what is this guy doing?
Yeah.
The flip side of, no one ever jabbing southpaws is that if you are a southpaw, you can get equally freaked out by people jabbing you. And yes, as I said, Trevin Giles.
Yeah.
Sort of lighting him up with combinations from the jab.
Yep.
But yeah, don't trust Garry to do that, frankly. I think it's honestly going to be too scary for him in his current form. I would like to be proved wrong, but I think we get a more classically neutralizing MMA performance where he gets on his bike and he maybe looks for the body kick and low kick and then a right hand every now and again.
Yeah. You know what? I think I'm going to make the classic mistake of not trusting my gut, and I'm actually going to pick Prates here. Sounds more fun having Prates as a top contender, so a little wish casting.
Mm-hmm.
But also, I think the other thing that's really come through in these recent performances from Garry is that because he's been placing so much more emphasis on the defensive parts of his game, we've got to see it pressure tested a lot. And what I see from Garry defensively is somebody who is often completely dependent on his eyes, needs to see all the shots coming because he is putting himself in really awkward positions. And getting his feet out of order and leaning back and collapsing into the cage and whatnot. And he's made it through to a large extent. Because his opponents aren't fighting very smart, but B, because he can at least see the shots coming. And if you put yourself in a horrible position, but you at least make the move at the right time, even if it's not the quote unquote right move, you're still going to get away with a lot against a certain kind of opponent. And I think Prates might be the wrong kind of opponent for that. I think Prates is a fighter that if you continually give him the same looks, he will actually throw some nasty combinations. He will sink some hard shots into your body rather than just chasing your head. And I think he does have a talent for adjusting his timing and his shot placement from one exchange to the next. I think that's the other thing it's easy to miss with Prates, but he has excellent eyes offensively as Garry does defensively. And I just think Garry is going to pay for some of these very sloppy retreats against somebody. And Prates does seem like the most likely candidate, even more so than Rachmanov, I would say. Of all of these guys, I think he has a real feel for striking exchanges that most fighters don't. So what the hell? But yeah, I mean, like, he basically has to, the first 3 rounds probably, get Garry out of there because, you know, maybe he handles himself fine in rounds 4 and 5, but I have no proof of that.
Yeah, maybe he just keeps adapting over the course of the fight. We just don't really see it.
Could be.
Because we can't. Maybe he's just a genuinely incredible tactical fighter.
Yeah, could
be.
He's
going to find solutions in a way that Garry, you know, just sort of doesn't. Garry comes in with his game plan and executes. But yeah, we can see that Prates adjusts over the course of the fight. So yeah, I mean, I'm glad that one of us is picking Prates because this is, again, like a lot of this card is just super well matched, and I don't know who to pick really.
I think this is a very well matched fight and a great main event for a fight night card. I really do.
Yeah.
Even if it has a high chance of ending up a bit of a stinker, I'm here to see it. I want to find out what happens. And also,
I mean, even then, it will be it'd sort of be impressive if Garry can
yeah, totally. It won't be fun, but
yeah, if Garry can just continue to just stink up every exciting prospect in welterweight, it'll be weirdly impressive.
He'll be next on the deportation list if he keeps doing it. Dana White's going to make a call.
Hamzat will be thrilled that he moved up to middleweight.
All right. Well, let's take our first break there then. When we come back, the co-main event. Just kidding. We're going to talk about Giga Chikadze versus David Onama after this.
Hey everybody, thanks for listening to this week's Heavy Hands. If you like what you hear, please consider pledging to support the podcast on Patreon. Patreon is basically continuous crowdfunding. You sign up to contribute a certain amount per month to help us with production costs and the like, and in return you get rewards ranging from a mention on the Heavy Hands website to a question or topic of your choice being discussed on the show. We have a lot more in the works to reward you for your help, and we appreciate every contribution. No amount is too small. Just head over to patreon.com and find how you can help out, the only show dedicated to the finer points of face punching. Now let's get back to it.
Welcome back to Heavy Hands. Let's talk about some featherweights, shall we? David Onama is one of these fighters, but Phil doesn't care about David Onama.
I do.
Oh, okay.
He's my shining hope in the darkness.
Oh, okay.
I'm the biggest David Onama fan in the world. What are you talking about?
Never heard of him till today, but suddenly realize I love this man. I love him dearly. That's right, because he is fighting Giga Chikadze. Now, explain to me again, Phil, and maybe as sort of happened for me with Shevchenko, though I've found, based on recent performances, it will never entirely go away. It's just the hatred is lurking, just sort of waiting to be fed, lying dormant much of the time. What is the source of your sort of animal distaste for Giga Chikadze?
He beat Edson Barboza, who is a much cooler fighter than him, in a really stupid way, because he sucks.
Okay, yeah. Fair enough. You know, people always expect, this is a thing people do, probably people have been doing this forever, I'm sure, but it's hard to not to notice its frequency in the internet age. People like to come up with public facing rationalizations for their various dislikes, for their tastes. Mm-hmm. And there was a comment last week, I think, about Paddy Pimblett. There were a couple. Some of them were like, oi, fuck you, you fucking Muppets, whatever. That's fine. That I expect. But somebody was like, why do you guys hate Paddy Pimblett so much? He's a socialist. And these people picked up on, they deduced from my shocking hatred of Adolf Hitler and his fanboys that I might be sympathetic to left-leaning politics. And I'm like, because I don't like him. Is that not enough? That's enough for me. I just don't like him. I think he's kind of stinks and is not great to watch as a fighter. I don't really hate Paddy Pimblett. He just annoys me. Is that okay? He's a character on a TV show I watch every week. I'm not allowed to be I don't like this guy. I'm not going to change my mind because I agree with him politically. I'm not talking about his politics. I'm talking about his fights. You know, like, welcome to the team, comrade. But, you know, when you're in the octagon, I'm only watching because it's my job. It's not doing it for me on a base level. That's all there is to it. And I'm glad that you're on the same page, Phil. I ask you, why do you hate Giga Chikadze? And you're like, he beats people I like more in stupid ways. So I don't like him.
Yep. That's it.
Good enough for me. Good enough for me.
Also, he called a left body kick the Giga kick.
Trademark. I invented this move. Yeah.
Like,
it's not like Demetrius Johnson's.
It's like the badass MMA nickname thing. It's okay if someone else gives it to you. You can't give it to yourself.
Yeah.
It's okay that people called Dan Henderson's overhand the H-bomb because they called it that.
Yeah. That was bestowed on him.
No one comes out and says, like, yeah, this is, GSP didn't call his jab the, I don't know, the Canadian jolt or something. Like, what are we doing here, man?
the Quebec jolt.
Yeah.
He's probably not from Quebec. He seems like an Alberta guy. Without looking, I'm going to assume Rory McDonald is from a farm in Alberta. So yeah, Giga Chikadze's back. He has not fought, since he, lost that fight with Arnold Allen. You gotta give him credit though, Phil. Well, you don't have to, but I will for you. If you're gonna give credit to Ian Garry for not like, winning convincingly, but being surprisingly effective in making people deal with the annoying parts of his game, Arnold Allen is a much better fighter than Giga Chikadze in many respects.
Mm-hmm.
But Giga Chikadze showed a lot of heart and gave him a pretty determined, tough fight that Arnold Allen really had to work his ass off to win.
Yep.
So you're not saying that he's not good. You just don't like him.
Yep.
And you're allowed to say there are ways in which he's not good. That's true of most fighters, and we'll get into that. He's fighting David Onama, which I personally find a much more frustrating fighter than Giga Chikadze. Chikadze to me is like one of...
Yeah,
go on.
I mean, David Onama I find frustrating.
Yeah.
Because, he's just got so many talents. And, Giga Chikadze is... he's just a finished product.
Yeah.
That's gonna win when it shouldn't. Onama is someone where you're just like, man, this guy could really be something, but he's just a mess. Just a mess every single time.
Chikadze is a finished product that's going to win when it shouldn't, but David Onama is a guy who is a mess. I picked up on that sort of subconscious dehumanization of Giga Chikadze there. That was
subconscious.
Okay, all right. Okay, sorry.
How dare you, sir?
Excuse me. I didn't mean to give you to give you too little credit. But
extremely deliberate dehumanization of that thing.
He's a dog. He's lower than a dog to me. Chikadze to me is like one of a dozen. I don't generally like that style, kick-based fighter who moves around a lot, but not particularly well. Listeners of the show, longtime listeners at least, may have picked up on the fact by now that I like boxing. Both as a sport and in the context of MMA. And I like it because I genuinely think it's kind of the best. I think, there's a million different styles of boxers, and certainly not everybody is doing it the same way. But I think you can derive from boxing the principles, and the processes that will carry you very far in a sport like MMA, where it can be damnably difficult to actually deal with the whole breadth of crazy shit that can happen to you defensively, on a case-by-case basis. That's a big reason why I'm so big on boxing principles, on the boxing idea of positional footwork and jabs and so on and so forth, because I watch a fighter like David Onama and realize that just none of that is there. He hasn't been taught any of it. And you get fights like his last one, where, who was it? Not his last one, actually. I'm actually thinking of a couple fights ago, his fight with, Gabriel Santos, who is like a, jiu-jitsu black belt grappling ace. Not that he's a chump as a striker. He's dangerous on the feet, but he was wrecking Onama on the feet for most of that fight. And I think it was because Onama came into that one aware that he had difficulty gassing out in multiple previous fights, and which actually cost him the win against Nate Landwehr, a guy who, say what you will about him, doesn't tend to gas out. And so he came into a fight with Gabriel Santos being like, I'm not going to go nuts and gas out. I know I have good conditioning, but it's because I burn all of my energy immediately. And what happened when Onama chose not to burn all of his energy immediately? He just let a fucking jiu-jitsu guy thrash him and hit him with everything he wanted, because, this is why fighters become capital T technical. Nobody's teaching them boxing. Nobody's teaching them principles like keep your lead hand and your lead foot between you and the opponent. Protect your center line. Force the guy to reset his feet by moving laterally. Change directions when you're moving laterally. Even, for God's sake, keep your fucking hands up. All of these are basic principles that are very good for beginners, which, compared to real boxers, MMA fighters sort of are in striking, usually for a very long time in their careers. Just because I think it's difficult to be defensive in this sport. And David Onama just did less, and it resulted in him very nearly getting run over before, as usually happens, he just goes Hulk mode and wins because he's a really talented athlete. So I find a guy like Onama much more frustrating than a guy like Chikadze, who just kind of has a generally annoying style. But at the very least, it makes sense. All that movement may not be good boxing footwork, but it does work against most MMA fighters to just move a ton and blast them with full power when you're at extreme range. So I get it.
Yep.
There's always a room for these karate motherfuckers in MMA. And Chikadze is just kind of a different flavor of the classic MMA karate fighter to me.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah. Just big body kick, a big head kick, just slings, hard, straight punches.
Yeah.
He just has well put together offensive tools that he will just run away until he can land.
Exactly. He stays really far away. You have to try to close on him because if you're at that range, you are going to get destroyed. And, maybe he doesn't have a Machida's sensibility for crushing you when you do close the gap, but he makes up for that by being much more insistent on maintaining that gap, as much as he can. I get it, at the very least.
And just being, bigger and strike for strike more powerful for his division.
It's a process, it's a process.
Yeah. So conversely, Onama, I think, one of the reasons why he is, someone who's had such a consistent action fighter, and, a consistent comeback machine is like you said, he's not a very good striker, from a technical standpoint. But what he definitely is, I think, is that he is one of these tactile punchers. Like Francis Ngannou, like Derek Brunson, and he has built that into his game.
Yeah.
And, like these fighters, he's obviously, at a better weight class. He's probably just a better fighter than
absolutely.
He's a technical mess for this for this weight class.
David Onama at light heavyweight would have fought for a title by now.
Yeah. And he's like a very sticky puncher. Again, this sort of contributes, as many things do, to him getting hurt in exchanges, because he will punch someone, leave his hand out there, try and grab a collar tie, then turn it into like a clinch exchange. Because he really doesn't have like a tremendous feel for neutral exchanges like a lot of these fighters do, but he can be really devastating once he's, out where his opponent is. He can be a really nasty combination puncher. He'll start like working the body. He's just, obviously being one of these guys, he's just naturally good in transition.
Totally.
Short slapping elbows, all that kind of stuff. Which means that once again, the basic dynamic of this one is probably Elkins. Is probably some variation of an Elkins-Johnson kind of fight where Chikadze is going to absolutely smoke him horrifically in round one.
Yeah.
And will probably be getting shredded in round three. This is the other, because the other thing about Chikadze is that the other thing that sort of differentiates him from like a Machida is that obviously his style is very athletically dependent.
Yeah, very energy intensive.
He needs to move around a lot, and he needs to absolutely sling his punches and kicks at people, and he knackers him.
Yeah,
and he's 36, and so there's a big possibility that Onama is going to be kicking the shit out of him in round three. Should he survive to that point? Which
is a real question.
I think
Onama is insanely durable and has, again, speaking to the fact that he is actually very well conditioned, he recovers insanely well. But I know that because he gets hurt in many fights.
Yeah, that's the thing, right? If he was just Cheeto Berra-ing these fights and just walking through them with no problem and, soaking up the damage to kill people, it would be one thing. But it's the fact that he gets put down in almost every one of his fights at some point, which does lead me to think that, especially in a 3-rounder, that the chance of Chikadze either finishing him or just fighting him bad enough in rounds 1 and 2 that even if he has that round 3, it's not big enough and it's not consistent enough, and even if it is, I don't know if he can actually really chase someone down.
Yeah, it's questionable. His footwork is, as you said, I think you hit the nail on the head. Like, anything that's happening at long range for Onama does seem like he's just kind of guessing. And, like any fighter, he can build a little confidence if he gets the guy going back, but against a guy who moves the way Chikadze does, that can very quickly deflate that kind of confidence, right? Because he's moving back, but it's actually not winning you the fight for at least the first 5 minutes. He's pretty quick and he's very agile and he's so far away to begin with. It's actually very hard to cut him off. Again, Allen knows how to cut off the cage. Allen has pretty good footwork, and it took a long time for him to not just kind of get stuck in either I'm chasing Chikadze or I have agreed to kind of a standoff with him at long range and alternating between the two. It took him probably about 7 minutes before he started punishing Chikadze on the reset. He started finding those sweeping corralling shots and hitting the body when he kept doing the same step off to his right, etc. I don't think that's a strength of Onama's at all. In fact, it's quite a weakness. One thing to consider, though.
Yeah.
This is another ace up Onama's sleeve, which also makes him a great comeback fighter. he will try to wrestle Chikadze. Even if it's after him getting badly hurt. And how is Chikadze's wrestling? Because, like, he's one of these fighters where I've seen him stuff incidental takedowns. Find a quick underhook or hit a good sprawl.
Mm-hmm.
But he just hasn't been matched with any actual wrestlers at all in the UFC.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody who's really come in with a plan of test. Not that it'll be a plan, but it's an eventuality with David Onama fights. He will start wrestling somebody. And it works for him because I would imagine that need to be in contact with the opponent to find the timing, because he is a brutal ground and pound fighter in top position. So I don't know. That's something that might become a problem for Chikadze, whether it's because he starts to get tired, or maybe goes for the kill and Onama just blunders into like a horrible looking double leg that surprises Chikadze, and then suddenly he's on top. He's very difficult. You have to actually put Onama away to take him out of the fight. He may think of himself now as a guy who's trying not to brawl, but the brawl will come to him. It will occur as the only possible solution to how badly I expect this fight to start for him. And
yeah, he has I think a stylistic edge over like Allen, for example, because Allen is someone who's, he's a man of two halves, where sometimes he wants to be, the tri-star back foot neutralizer, but then he's got his like mean streak where he wants to beat people up.
Yeah, he also hungers for blood.
And he had to find that hunger and slot it into the game plan against Chikadze, and it was tough. And Onama simply wants blood the whole time.
Yeah,
but yeah, I do think I have to pick. I just have to pick Chikadze.
Yeah, I think I agree.
It's such a horrible early matchup, like so bad. But it is also one of those things where, he's 36 with a very athletically dependent game against someone who's going to be testing him literally the entire time. And yeah, if he disintegrates at all physically, that's another one of the reasons why I find him annoying, is that I don't think his game plan will work very well if he doesn't have the athleticism to back it up. But yeah, and Onama is exactly the kind of sort of Blue Factory style, this person is unstructured but they're incredibly physical fight that would be bad for him. But yeah, as it stands, I haven't seen that from Chikadze, and I kind of have to pick it.
Yeah, I mean that statement also applies to Onama. Like, without his physical abilities, he would be worse than Chikadze. He doesn't even have the process that Chikadze has. If he wouldn't have made it to the UFC at all, not even in the Contender Series era, without some pretty high level.
But he looks cooler, but punches people to the body.
Yeah,
and he hits them with clinch elbows.
Yeah. There's a lot of cool stuff that happens in every Onama fight. He's
never beaten Edson Barboza by running away.
That's true. That is a point in his favor. What I was going to say is you could apply that statement to him as well, but he is 30 years old. And it's very likely his style won't take him to 36 as well as Chikadze's style has, because he gets soaking up massive amounts of damage in every single fight. But for now, he's 30, and it's a concern. I'm going to pick Chikadze as well. I just think I agree that the fight is going to start horribly for Onama, and I do trust him to make things crazy, whether he wants to or not, after a horrible start. He's done it many, many times, but he just hasn't fought somebody who's actually like a puzzle, which, again, even the likes of Arnold Allen kind of struggled to solve. Everybody he's fought's kind of like, Gabriel Benitez gave him a tough fight, but like Gabriel Benitez just kept trading with him in the pocket. So Onama found it. Chikadze's not going to do that at all.
Oh, he's going to stick to his game plan.
Yep.
no matter what happens, and it's not a game plan which is good for David Onama.
No, doesn't seem like it. All right. Again, I think a very sensibly matched fight. Makes a lot of sense, should be a lot of fun, and there's a lot of room for an upset, supposing that the bettors view this fight the way we do and see Onama as an underdog. He is definitely a dark horse kind of fighter. So, I like it. Let's take a break on that note and pick up a couple of scraps from this undercard after this.
Financial support is fantastic, but there are other, even easier ways to support Heavy Hands. Perhaps the best is by spreading the word. We know our fan base. You're all cool, popular people with serious social media presences. You're tastemakers and trendsetters. Okay, there are one or two of you that don't fit that description. You know who you are, but no matter what, you can always help us out by telling folks about the show. You can also give us a positive rating and review on iTunes and Stitcher, things like that. We rely on word of mouth and positive feedback to grow and improve, so thank you very much for your time and your help. Now, back to the show.
Welcome back to Heavy Hands. Let's talk about, which one should we hit first? I suppose we should have planned anything. I pegged Randy Brown, Nicholas Dalby as the one that caught my eye. I'm interested in both of those fighters, but it's not the only at least half decent fight on this undercard. For example, oh my God, I didn't even put this together. I noticed that Matt Schnell was on this card, and I had to kind of double take. I was like, didn't he put his gloves down after his last fight? I don't know why I should be surprised by that at this point, but yes, he did. Like 7 months ago or something, he retired. I didn't even pick up on the fact that he's fighting Jimmy Flick, another, until very recently, quote-unquote, retired MMA fighter. So that's some of the stuff that's happening on the undercard here. But you were going to say, Randy Brown, Dalby, you want to talk about that?
Yeah, I mean, there's, I think almost pretty much all of the remaining fights are interesting in one way or another. Like, I mean, for example, like, Michel Pereira, Abus, let's just say, Magomedov, is, nominally a get back on track fight for Pereira. But, like, Magomedov's incredibly underwhelming losses have aged insanely well.
It's true.
Like, Caio Borralho, Sean Strickland, and that is it.
Mm-hmm.
In recent memory. Admittedly, he hasn't fought very much, but, Yeah,
I mean, literally everybody else.
Bruno Ferreira.
Everybody else he's fought has not aged well. In some cases, quite literally, because some of them were very old, like Warley Alves, for example, fighting at fucking middleweight in 2024 in the year of our Lord. And Bruno Ferreira has been falling apart, and Dustin Stoltzfus is, I kind of like the guy. He's trying, but he is possibly the slowest fighter on the entire roster. So, like, these haven't aged well, but the losses, it's hard to say you're way worse than everyone else in the division for having suffered those losses, right?
Mm-hmm. And yeah, I think he's got a strong chance of getting classic Pereira stinker out of Michel Pereira. Yeah. So even that one I find more like intriguing than perhaps it looks on paper.
It's
but yeah,
better than
Randy
your
Brown,
classic
Nicholas
Apex
Dalby.
slop. It's better than your classic Apex slop, isn't it? It's hard not to acknowledge that. Brown Dalby, what do you think? A real style clash, a classic MMA style clash in some ways, especially given the way that Dalby has been fighting in these late days of his career.
Right. This feels like one of the ones where actually, I don't know.
Mm.
I was like, I want to pick Dalby here because he is brutally consistent.
Mm-hmm.
Like, he is just going... He is just in determination incarnate. He's always been that, really. Even more so nowadays. where he's just going and going and going, and Randy Brown is, he's just dynamic talent with absolutely no consistency whatsoever.
Even I would say.
So yeah, there's
even like actual skill with no consistency. Like,
yeah.
The problem for Randy Brown is not that he's not some like super athlete, who's just a mess. He's actually capable of being a really precise, balanced, creative in a good way, like creative within the bounds of a safe but threatening technical game kind of fighter. Process is the problem for Randy Brown. He is a classic example of a fighter who habitually takes his eye off the ball or doesn't feel the appropriate sense of urgency when he's put into a bad spot or whatever, just approaches a fight with a horrible strategy for the opponent in front of him. Or approaches it with a great one and then kind of seems to get bored and tries something different and gets himself in trouble. He's a very skilled fighter.
He very much feels like, it very much feels like best fighter at the gym kind of. Actors with him. Yeah. In that he's super happy if he can just be. And to say this, if I say that he's having a sparring match with his opponent, I'm not saying that like he's not incredibly violent. I'm saying that if he can control the pace at a certain distance, he's just incredibly happy. But even then, once he's happy, he will start doing silly things. But. Because, again, he just, finds other ways to entertain himself. But, it's also that when he's pushed out of, when people are physically competing with him, and he's pushed out of his comfort zone in terms of what the fight is, it immediately just becomes incredibly messy. Yeah. So, he's he's very matchup dependent. Yeah. There's many fights where you can just look at it and just be like, this person's going to try and fight Randy Brown on the outside. They're going to get fucking wrecked. It doesn't really matter. You could be someone as coherent and otherwise difficult to hurt as Muslim Salikov. You're just like, no, that's not going to work. Yeah. This is like like Jalen Turner against Bobby Green. It doesn't matter how good you are if you're going to have a slow-paced outside kickboxing fight with him. He's just going to blow your doors off. And the thing is that Nicholas Dalby isn't going to do that. Nicholas Dalby's going to charge him, and he's going to get him into the clinch, and he's just going to keep going and going and going until he wins. Yep. And it's the only thing that makes me. The only thing that really gives me pause is how badly, again, Randy Brown may just kick the shit out of him before that happens. Because that was one of my sort of thoughts when Brian Barberena fought Randy Brown back in the day. Because I was like, oh yeah, Brian Barberena, he'll just go after him and just make it a dirty fight. He'll make it a tough, gritty fight. And then I thought about it a bit and I was like, oh no, actually Randy Brown's going to smoke him. And there's a genuine kind of question that Dalby has been fighting. Good.
Was there something that was cut out there? He's been fighting good, or guys who are pretty good.
People who fighters who are pretty good, but no one who is as like ferociously dynamic as Randy Brown is. And he has been essentially wading through the fire to do it every single time.
Yeah, he had that. Gabriel Bonfim is pretty dynamic. He's not as slick or technical as Randy Brown is capable of being. He's pretty dangerous. I mean, Rinat Fakhretdinov is, in fact, pretty damn dangerous, a surprisingly tough puncher, but stylistically, none of them feel like Randy Brown. But the other half of Randy Brown, I mean, I think it's obviously a very different fight, but it's hard not to kind of call this the same way I believe we called his fight with Della Maddalena, which I think I have a distinct memory of that being just a basically zero thought required, super straightforward pick. Because we're like, okay, Randy Brown is actually going to be able to compete quite well with Maddalena at range. He's going to hit him with the jab. He's going to outmaneuver him. And then at some point, he's just going to kind of walk into the cage and stop moving. And at that moment, Jack Della Maddalena will destroy him. And that is precisely what happened.
Yep.
And I don't expect Nicholas Dalby to instantly destroy Randy Brown. I mean, the difficulty for Dalby here is that the fight will probably continue for some time after he succeeds in waiting for Randy Brown to walk himself into the fence. And if that's the case, I mean, look at all the slip-ups, of a different kind, of course, but look at all the slip-ups that Brown endured against, Chaos Williams a few years ago. He just kept screwing up. He just kept trying goofy, too creative for his own good things that got him into trouble, when otherwise he was really comfortably, piecing Williams up from long range. But Williams was not able to finish him as Della Maddalena did. And so Randy Brown was given unlimited opportunities to go back to fighting smart after getting tagged, and it was enough to win. And that's the problem here. Like, Dalby is, in a broad stylistic way, is a nightmare for somebody who has an issue with cage generalship. But in another way, like, you know, next round's going to start at range. Brown's going to get, you know, maybe he gets out of that clinch. Dalby's not super dangerous. It's not like Dalby it's impossible to outmaneuver him in those clinches. I mean, it's not even like Randy Brown is a bad clinch fighter.
No.
So, like, yeah, he's going to end up playing Dalby's game a lot without really intending to. But playing Dalby's game is not a death sentence like it is against Della Maddalena. Different parameters, different margins for error.
Yep. But yeah, I just feel like Brown is he's one of those guys his game is just not built to function at the pace that Dalby hits.
Yeah.
You know, if he fought someone like Fluffy Hernandez, it would be the same thing. This guy wants a comfortable fight. And what's his face? Brian Battle giving him, you know, a more athletic but far stinkier.
Oh, yeah.
And more inert version of what Dalby does, of just like pressing him. In Battle's case, it was just shoving him into the cage over and over again and just kind of sucking. But Dalby will just be going after him. And I just think Brown will just find it harder and harder to get into that, oh, we're having fun and I'm doing slick stuff mentality, if he's just constantly being put on the back foot. You know, I'll remember the name Muhammad when he fought Randy Brown back in the day. You know, it wasn't quite the same way that construction that Dalby would have. I mean, again, it was like another impressive example of how well Muhammad knows what his opponents don't like, because he was one of his like biggest low kicking performances that we've seen from him.
Yep.
But yeah, I just don't think Randy Brown's game functions against someone who can hit Dalby's pace. Is pretty much.
Yep.
That's just it.
Because if you can't immediately convert the advantage of pressuring him into the fence like Della Maddalena does, then what you need instead is ruthless consistency. And that Dalby does have. He absolutely has it. He's also like, I also don't think he's actually going to be completely it would be silly to think that he'll be a fish out of water at range as well. Like, it's going to be tough. Brown has a big reach advantage, and he has a lot of tools to take advantage of that, but Dalby used to be much more of a striker. And, will get hit, and we'll fire back with a combination. We'll end his combinations with kicks. We'll give Brown enough information, enough stress in the striking battle to continually compel him to back himself into a corner. And then just will make the fight absolutely miserable for both of them. But Dalby likes it. He likes being miserable. Yep. Or he at least thrives in that state. And it just doesn't matter. Like Dalby's fights, they spin out of control in ways that would be deflating to so many less confident, less determined fighters. He's, take that Bonfim fight I mentioned, for example. Like, Bonfim is hitting takedowns on him. He's getting pressed against the cage and hitting like a nice clinch break where he starts to escape. He's taking Dalby's back, standing up. All kinds of things are going wrong constantly for Dalby. And he just doesn't accept the bad positions he ends up in. He just doesn't accept that the momentum is changing at any point. Yep. He just goes right back to the grindstone. And I think that's reason enough for me to pick him as well over Randy Brown. Once again,
he just has he might not be like an elite physical specimen or anything, but Nicholas Dalby he's just one of those guys, just has an undeniably elite will to win.
Mm-hmm.
Like, he has a championship mentality in a sort of moderately underwhelming body.
Yeah. I mean, he is the thing, even if he's not the dynamic type of person that we usually apply the term athlete to, he is very strong and is very well conditioned.
He's very strong and very well conditioned.
So he will make his physicality a problem for you, even without having that kind of next level acceleration and coordination that the really great athletes have. He's still a physical problem.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Okay. Well, I think that'll probably do it. I mean, we don't have to stretch ourselves to talk about everything else on this undercard. Again, it's not without interesting fights. I mentioned Alisquera versus Muniz. We've also got Chris Gutierrez versus John Castaneda is an interesting fight. Damon Blackshear versus Alateng Haile is kind of an interesting fight. We've also got Chelsea Chandler versus Jocelyn Edwards in the curtain jerker slot. Remember when Chandler ran into the cage?
No.
Oh,
thankfully not.
When she just fully turned away from her opponent and ran face first into the fence.
Oh, yes. No, I do remember. Amazing.
How could you forget that?
Yeah.
So that's good of a completely different kind. Hey.
Yep.
It's a fight night card. It feels like a fight night card. There were probably fight night cards that were less full of well-made fights, even before the Apex era now and then. So it's not even that bad, I think.
No, it's just genuinely a pretty good one by most standards.
A lot of interesting fights on here. A lot of unpredictable matchups. Can't complain too much. Much as I would love to, I can't find it in myself to complain. All right, well, I think that will have to do it then for this week's episode of Heavy Hands. It did take me over a week to finish it, but by the time this episode comes out, I urge you to check out my write-up of Volkanovski Lopez. Remember that fight, Phil? Remember that one?
Oh, yeah.
It was pretty good, right?
Cool.
Well, I wrote about it. You can find that on facepunching.substack.com. And then I will think I'll probably be getting back to working on my big George Foreman piece, which I would like to have out at least sometime in the next couple weeks. Enough with the, Phil, I realize, like, I just work slowly,
Mm-hmm.
I'm just one of these people who just work slowly.
You're just a craftsman.
I mean, yeah.
Slowly sculpting a masterpiece.
They're certainly not masterpieces, but I do find it really difficult just to bang out something with, like, I agonize, certainly too much for my own good and too much for my readers' good as well. But at some point in my life, I'm going to have to just, like, stop obsessively feeling guilty about this and just, like, let people know up front, like, I appreciate your support know going in that I work slowly, but I really care about the stuff that I put out. That's all I can do. I don't know how to change.
Well, it's all anyone can ask for.
Yeah. Maybe I should, whatever the writer's version of capital T technicality is, that'll be the next phase of my career.
Yeah. How's that going to work?
I don't know. But all I'm saying is it'll be a change that is not actually a real improvement. That'll happen.
Sweet.
So look forward to that. And in the meantime, check out my Volkanovski Lopez write-up on facepunching.substack.com. And find us on social media, on Twitter at BoxingBush. That's me, at Evil Greg Jackson. That's the one that is not me. And on Blue Sky, you can find also me at King Typo. And we will catch up with you all next week when we have, another half-decent looking fight card coming up before we eventually return to the Apex. So until then, if you came here today for the finer points of face punching, you came to the right place. This has been Heavy Hands.
I like the way that you told everyone, don't worry, I'm going to have a point in my career where I get more considered and my pace slows down.
I'm going to become more defensively minded and get even worse at actually completing the projects. Oh, God.
What are the risks of me putting this sentence down?
I think I'm already there, is the reality.
Yeah.
I'm already a capital T technical writer. Oh, fuck.
Maybe you just need to come out of your young veteran phase into your one where you realize that you're actually a ripped athletic writer who can just blast out articles.
That's right. Boom, vocab. Boom, fucking complex grammar. Blow, semicolon.
Oh, yeah.